Welcome back, everybody, to the Joy Osborne Show. I'm your host, Joy Osborne, with some of the biggest news in sports this week. And today, we finally back after a long hiatus, and boy, do we have one really big thing to talk about today. Uh, First off, here, we have a guest on the show today, Mr. Tyler Allen. Of course, you know him, he's been on a couple times now, from the Yinzers at the Point podcast, and he's here specifically because of what we're talking about today here with the Penguins making a big move and hiring Kyle Dubas from the Toronto Maple Leafs to be the new president of hockey operations for the Penguins. And right now, I'm just going to say this here. We've been monitoring this situation for the best, pretty much, I say, last 2 weeks here. A lot of smoke signals type of stuff here. We really have not known what's going on here, what is going to happen. There's been so many conflicting reports so far, especially in the last week. We had Frank Savelli saying no, he rejected it. He's going to go off to Ottawa. And we've also had, of course, Mark Madden, who is, let's just say, not a reliable source in the Pittsburgh area, saying they're finalizing it. So, a whole bunch of stuff. But today, before any of the reporters could get to it, the Penguins officially announced it themselves. So, he's here now, and somehow Mark Madden was right for the first time in his life. So, pretty much, I will say this here. Congrats to Mark Madden. Who actually did some,
He finally did it.
just stop while you're ahead, alright, buddy? Just stop while you're ahead. Yeah, but no, that's the big news here, pretty much. So yeah, let's get into it here. Tyler, you're the big, of course, Penguins fan here, Yinzer. Of course, I'm somehow in the Georgian, you're not, but let's be honest.
Hey, I got the hat. But
Yeah,
I took
yes,
it off.
yeah, he's got the hat, yeah. So what do you think here right now on the Dubas situation? Like, are you happy with the result we got this morning?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy about this. I've been waiting for this day to happen. I mean, I tweeted the other day. I'm like, Pittsburgh, are you going to announce Dubas as the new GM? Wasn't the GM presence of hockey ops kind of a bigger step up, but I'm very excited about what he's going to do to the Penguins here in the coming months. How he's going to hire a new GM. I know he's taking the reign a little bit now, but it's definitely the perfect case scenario for the Penguins. And I know I kind of said the same thing about Ron Hextall, and clearly that didn't work out. So
yeah, I will say this here, the Ron Hextall thing, he had me too, but to be fair, he was GM in Philly, and we all know Philly, they screw everything up, honestly. It's like, and he looked at least to everyone like he was going to be a very good GM. You know, like, baseball prospects and stuff. Same thing with general managers in any sport. He looked like one of the top guys there. It seemed like he was going to be a big player and he could really be a good GM. Of course, we were all proven wrong, as he was probably the worst Penguin GM we have had probably in my lifetime. That's like 20 years. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. And like, same with Brian Burkepiece. He was our president of hockey ops too. And I really thought that was going to be good for the team too, because he's had GM experience in Vancouver and Toronto. Pretty sure he had some experience in Anaheim too as a GM back in the day. But like with those two, you had to have thought that there's some success there, because Ron Hextall was doing great things in Philadelphia, because I'm pretty sure he was there when they drafted Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny.
Yeah, no, that was him.
Yeah, stuff like that. So he had a good draft record, and I think that's what really the Penguins wanted back at that time.
Yeah,
but clearly Philadelphia screwing up our playoff plans and what we're doing.
But this about Hextall right now, the problem wasn't the drafting or gaining the youth. The problem was the unwillingness to trade, and then again panicked at the moment when we actually really needed to, i.e., the whole debacle that was the trade deadline this year.
That was terrible.
The problem is he just wasn't aggressive enough, and when he got, of course, too much pressure, he screwed up big time.
No, yeah, that's what he.
I think the thing is, he could be a good assistant general manager somehow. I think he could be. I just don't think he's a good GM in my mind. Now, maybe he needs a little more mentoring and stuff. Maybe he needs to rethink some things and figure stuff out, and maybe he can come back and be one. But it's gonna be pretty tough to come back from what he has had to do, of course, and as a GM in Pittsburgh. Now, am I saying that he whenever will come back, it's like a different role? No, I think actually he'd probably be a good fit for a different role, like specifically scouting wise. I think he would be a good fit there, was scouting wise. And then on the whole Brian Burke thing, he was a good GM. He's out of date. It's him like Jim Ruff, like they're out of date general managers now. Like they past their expiration date. This is not as good as used because the game's changed and they have not changed with the game, obviously. But definitely, it's a completely different scenario here with Dubas. This is a young guy. I think when he was hired, he was the second youngest general manager in the NHL behind John Chocula. And John Chocula, who was actually a candidate for the Penguins job, was pretty young. Like, I think he was 25 when he got hired. Like, this guy
Yeah,
is
that's
right now.
young.
Dubas is 37. Like, this is a young guy. This is not your usual GM. That's pretty much of course, like most GMs are in their 50s whenever they get hired for the first time, late 40s. Like, you usually don't have guys get hired this young, but if they all get hired this young, it normally means they're pretty good. And Kyle Dubas, he has the let's just say the stats to back it up here. But I will also say for this year, this is definitely similar to like last time with the Penguins Germans. Like, it seemed like it was a good idea, but then of course it did. Cause I think everyone thought here pretty much that Ron Hextall and Brian Burke would be the solution, and they really fix things. And yeah, they was just plain out wrong, and it's a little joke. Pretty much left their whole organization time with the Penguins war. But yeah, let's talk about Dubas a little bit more, just like what we're getting here. So pretty much, he worked for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds in the OHL for a while. That's his hometown, like minor league teams. Kind of like if someone from Altoona like was general managing for the Altoona Corps. Like, that's pretty much like what we're talking about here, kind of.
Yeah, like
Well,
they always.
me's like example, one of us was GMing for the Butler Blue Sox. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that, really.
Well, the thing with Dubas is, he started working for the team when he was 11 years old. I think he was selling tickets or something. By age 17, he already got a scouting job with the Greyhounds. By 25, he was the GM, and then he became the GM of the Maple Leafs. So his track record is really good because he's done scouting experience before. He obviously, look what he did in Toronto. Maybe Toronto doesn't have that good of a future with their draft picks now, but still, they got over that hump, like 20-year drought or whatever that was. But it's the best of both worlds for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, here's what I would say on this year, because he walked there. Like, he got GM pretty early on there, like 2008, something like that.
Yes,
And
he was 25.
he did a very good job, to the point where the Maple Leafs then had him as the assistant general manager and the GM for the AHL team, the Toronto Marlies. So this guy played a key role in bringing what Toronto has in a young talent, even before he was even the GM. He's probably the main guy who helped develop Austin Matthews and made Austin Matthews what he is. Same with Mitch Marner, and you could also say the same with Nylander too. And also Morgan Riley, like all those guys, he developed them. Like, he may have not officially drafted them, but he was the guy developing them, turning them into good players, and there's countless other great depth pieces on the Toronto Maple Leafs that he helped develop and have brought them to the point where they've been very good bottom six guys. And so, like, you look at the track record, he's got a very great track record. As GM of the Maple Leafs, the one thing he is known for that isn't the best is he is known for spending a lot of money. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think for the most part of Dubas, it's worked well for him. Like, of course, his first offseason, he signed John Tavares to a nice contract there for Maple Leafs. Like, he's the kind of guy who will go out there and he will get you nice players. And just the way, like, he does add. Like, he's not the kind of guy who just sit around like Hextall and not do anything. If there's a problem or like an issue, he will go out there and add. He's very aggressive. I don't know if also, and we of course saw, the whole pretty much this playoffs where they kept showing him in the booth reacting to the game. But, like, you can tell he's a very invested guy. He's very into it. He's pretty much a Yinzer from Canada, pretty much, I would say. That is kind of what he is, but just the way he's been for the most part, um, even his draft selections, he got Yusuf Sandine, who was a very great young prospect defenseman, who is now in Washington. He was traded, but that is a great option, honestly. The
Yeah, and
drafting
he
here, from what I see, it's pretty good drafting in my mind. Um,
Yeah, I mean, just recently drafting Nicholas Robertson, Matthew Nyes.
yeah.
I mean, those are good young players that Toronto now has in their system, and have already gotten NHL playing time, and they're gonna thrive in this league.
But they'll five for least in the first round because that team's cursed. But the players would do well. They would do well. The Maple Leafs, the new GM they hired, the former Calgary Flames GM. I don't know about that. I think that's gonna blow up in their face pretty badly. Because I think he's an awful GM, but that's beyond the point right now. But yeah, like just in general, he's able to attain talent as well. He was able to sign Matthews to a 5 year extension. Nylander, who was had a pretty big dispute, they were still able to sign him to a nice 6 year contract. I think Sam Marno too. He's also done that. And he's just just the way he does things, pretty much. He's done a good job with what he's done. He's very high in the analytic department, and honestly, that's the main thing nowadays. Like the really good GMs, they're analytics guys. That's what they are. That's where we've come to. This is just in any sport now. Like the analytic guys are winning supreme pretty much right now. Like look at the Chiefs. They don't just go and get the big names, of course, football. They also get out players who they think they can get the best of and they can win. That's kind of how a lot of things go. Some of the Steelers even had as this offseason is they've gotten some big names, but they've also gone out and got guys who are more underrated, but they're probably just as good. Like that's just well in general. Every sports team is going that way. Like in any league, going toward the analytics because it's showing pretty much everything about a player. And like we now nowadays can know so much more. So being able to have a guy who's very well, uses this very well and can, of course, do a lot of the great stuff with it. That's a big bonus. That's something that Hextall just, he was great at finding young talent. He didn't seem like he was much of an analytics guy in my mind. And Brian Bork is, if we're calling him an analytics guy, then I must be Mickey the Mouse or something because he is not an analytics guy, that's for sure. He is pretty much a fossil from the old, more gritty hockey era 2000s. But yeah, no, this is definitely a complete opposite of Hextall, I would say. Like this is gonna be a perfect fit for Mike Sullivan. Dubas, he was GM, like kind of guys he does acquire here, and what tournament it was based team, just like of course Mike Sullivan when we won the cups wanted. Like that's Mike Sullivan's system is the speed. So I think they will fill on perfectly, and then of course Tyler, I didn't want to hear what your thoughts on just like what you think the relationship between Sullivan and Dubas will be like. I think it's gonna be not a match made in heaven, but it's gonna be a pretty good match just because they're very similar people. The way they view hockey and the way they, of course, do their business in hockey is eerily similar. And I don't think there's much in a way of difference between the two of them when it comes just the way they view hockey. But yeah, your thoughts, Phil.
Yeah, so first I want to say, back when the Penguins fired Hextall and Burke, one thing that FSG clearly stated in that press conference after is they wanted a guy who does analytics and I guess the modern area because I guess Ron Hextall and Burke, they're outdated people. I mean,
That or they just didn't have a plan, i.e. Hextall. Yeah. Apparently, whenever they asked for a plan, FSG, he couldn't name a plan.
No, he couldn't.
If you can't name a plan, it's not a plan, it's a disaster.
He is a guy who panics under pressure. Why do you think the Penguins got Granlund at the deadline? Oh, because the assistant general manager said to do it. Why do you think the Penguins got Jakob Chychrun from Arizona? Because he wasn't being that aggressive in trying to get Chychrun, and Ottawa ended up getting him. Same with I know the Brock Besser sweepstakes or whatever between Vancouver.
Well, those are actually still going on, so that is actually something I would pay attention to. Now, I don't think that'll happen as much with Dubas. Like, I don't think he'll go after him, but I can see Dubas still going after him. But I think there's a more sweeter prize that he's looking at for next offseason. And we'll get into that in a little bit here, but yeah, definitely it's gonna be, of course, interesting to see. It's gonna be a day and night difference between Hextall and Dubas. And whoever he hires as the GM, which of course, honestly, could also never even be someone hired, or it could be just someone in the namesake, because that is a thing. I will talk about this here real quick. That there are teams that are known to have a presence of either hockey operations or basketball, or just any sport they're in, and they do hire a GM, but it's pretty much just in name and all. Like it's not really like he's gonna actually do some stuff. Like he's just it's kind of there as like in name, like he's the GM, but really the president doing it. I know a perfect example. I don't. If you guys watch basketball, I'm sure you know the Cleveland Cavs. Kobe Altman, president of basketball operations, pretty much the direct role that Dubas has, except Dubas is, of course, is president of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But they're the same roles, pretty much, just in different sports. And he pretty much is the GM. Like there was a GM in name there, but it's pretty much Kobe Altman making the deals and pretty much doing the player movement. So that is some I think we can't see because like that's just basketball one again here. Like the whole Donovan Mitchell trade. I don't know if Charlie you know about that or not, but it was this big trade last year that the Cavs got a spectacular player win. Didn't save from losing in the first round, but it did at least make them to the playoffs. But like that was all him. Like that wasn't a GM. Like he was doing that himself, and this is a huge trade. Like I guess would be pretty much in hockey terms. I would say actually playing for Austin Matthews. Actually, that would be kind of weird. It's like if you were gonna trade for Austin Matthews, that's actually the perfect example to compare Donovan Mitchell to in the NHL. But that would be pretty much like what you'd be trading for. You'd be trading for that kind of in that way. It's like that is a thing that does happen, and I kind of have a vibe by now that that may be what Dubas's plan is, because the main issue with him and him getting fired by Toronto, like at first he was not fired, he was going to be back at the time, but there were issues with the contract, and apparently Dubas wanted more control, and of course their president of hockey operations, Shanahan, pretty much was saying no to that idea here for the most part. And honestly, it seems like that's what he wanted. He wanted a president's role and a GM role, it seemed like. So he's named as president for the Penguins, but I can easily see this becoming more of he's gonna do both for the most part. He always is doing it through July. So if there's a GM put in place, unless he's a really good talent and he offers a different skill set to what Dubas does, I feel like Dubas is actually going to probably have the last say in things. Like I think he will pretty much be the GM in all but name. In my mind, I think that's what he was want. That's what he was wanting. Toronto was he pretty much wanted Shanahan's job. Plus, more like he wanted complete control over the team, and that is something Pittsburgh he is gonna get. They are gonna give him complete control over the team. In my mind, that's perfectly justified. If you look at his track record of Toronto, I don't think you can really say the whole playoff losses are his fault, because if you look at the history of that team, this is kind of a cursed team in general. There's a great video by a guy who named by the name of Urinating Tree. I don't know if you ever seen him, Tyler.
Yeah, urinating tree.
Big
Yes, I know.
prospects and stuff. And there's one of the Maple Leafs, and they had this awful owner, like just did a whole bunch of awful stuff. After the team in the '60s, they haven't even made it close to the Stanley Cup since. So, and he pretty much said, yeah, of course, and I gotta agree with him. This is one of those course franchises where they just, no matter what they do, they're not going to be able to, of course, win. And I think Dubas, of course, this is another thing. There's a lot of GMs, of course, a lot of great GMs. And if first off, they don't have the best success. Like you can be an insanely good GM, we won't win anything at one place. Well, but when they go to another place, they then win a whole bunch of stuff, and you realize, or maybe it was just where they were at, rather than their skill set or anything. And I think that's the thing with Dubas is I think if there's any other team that wasn't Toronto and Coast, I kind of feel like he probably wouldn't want to stay in the cup at this point, honestly. Just the moves he made, like he was making the right moves. I don't think he was the problem. And honestly, I don't think the Keefe, their head coach, was a problem either. I think your main problem was probably the not only you, of course, but Brendan Shanahan, who is, of course, the president of the Maple Leafs. I think he is the main problem in Toronto. I think that is the main problem more than probably being forced. I normally don't believe in forces, but in the sports world, there's always a little of that. But yeah,
Well, well, Shanahan and Dubas, they never got along.
yeah.
That's probably why the main reason Dubas left was because I don't know what, but there was some type of beef in between the two, and it wasn't working out, and that's why he left.
Yeah, I think I did see that. I think what the main thing was there was different views on where they wanted the Maple Leafs to be. Pretty much, I don't think he was agreeing with what Dubas was doing. I don't think he like. I think he wanted a more gritty or physical team. Well, Dubas, of course, obviously wanted what is the better option, and at least in my mind, is a speed-based team.
And that's
There
exactly
was
what.
conflicts there at the time, of course. But yeah, it does, of course, open up a lot of issues. There's like you know, and that's something he's not gonna have to deal with in Pittsburgh because he will be the president. He's not gonna have anyone with much of a problem. And like pretty much, the great thing is, it seems like him and Sullivan are already off to a great start. As because in the press conference, he talked very highly of Sullivan, and it seems like they get along very well already, which is a great thing to see. Because I don't think Hextall and Sullivan really did get along that well to begin with. Like maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think they did. But this definitely, of course, that's another thing too. Like he's not gonna have someone over his shoulder like Shanahan who he doesn't agree with. He's gonna have people who probably agree with him, and they just want to win. And I just think, like, honestly, if you're Kyle Dubas, this is the perfect situation for you to be in. Honestly, like this is what he's been waiting for. Like this is what he wanted in Toronto. He's gonna get here in Pittsburgh, and that's gonna help him out so much. Honestly. And the thing I will say about Kyle Dubas, he is a spectacular GM. And even though he's the president, he will probably take on a role kind of like how I mentioned earlier about the Kobe Altman. But I will say this year, he is definitely better than Hextall, obviously. I think he's better than Jim Rutherford. I think he's definitely better than Ray Shiro. I think this is the best general manager talent we have had in that position, or even just in the front office in general in Pittsburgh, since Craig Patrick. So as we all know, he's the guy who got Mario Lemieux, he got Yago, he got Crosby, and Malkin. Like he got a lot of the major faces that have, of course, given us all the Stanley Cups. Like he is the guy who drafted these guys. I think even Chris Letang is a product of the Craig Patrick era because Patrick's last deal was, of course, the Sidney Crosby's fourth deal in the NHL. Like that was the last draft he did was Crosby, I think. If I'm not mistaken, but I think that was his last draft. Like, I think this is the guy here who can actually be compared to Craig Patrick as a kind of guy who can actually do some spectacular things for the Penguins. And when definitely talking today, he talked a lot about, of course, the future of not only next year, but past the Sidney Crosby era, past the beginning Malkin era, into like the new era. And what he said was interesting. I know, Tyler, you actually listened to the press conference. I did too, but I want to get a little more involved here. So, you want to talk a little bit about that and your takeaways from that press conference?
Yeah, so one of the big things is the connection that him and Sullivan will have. And my thoughts on that is they're both two guys that love seeing speed. And with Dubas, the group will be euthanized, which is, I think, is what Dubas is going to do, is euthanize the team, get very fast. I wouldn't want to say physical, but just speedy players that can finish a play.
Yeah,
You know, in the bottom six, maybe even in the top six. I mean, Dubas has $20 million to work with here. And I still think Sullivan's going to have that bigger role working with Dubas and that GM and just the connections. With that, I know Dubas was asked about what he's going to do with Crosby, Jari in the future. stuff like that. How he's, I mean, typically it's what you want every GM or new president or GM to say is, you have to trust your staff. If you don't trust your staff, you're not going to be successful. Because if you don't trust your staff, you might not trust the scouting, and then when it comes to drafting those new players, your development's going to be terrible. And maybe those generational talents that you drafted might not be those generational players because your development's poor. And with Dubas, it's all connected now. Dubas is the missing piece in my mind that can really put together uh, a great Penguins team again. And maybe Crosby, Malkin, Letang got that one more chance at a fourth Stanley Cup in their career before we leave the Crosby era and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I was saying here honestly, it seems like there was a plan that Dubas is here long term. Like, even if the Ottawa job opens up, it seems as if Dubas is more sold into being in the Penguins organization rather than Ottawa. I know that was the team everyone was in Pittsburgh was worried about coming in and stealing them. But just from the press conference, it really sounds like he has massive plans for Pittsburgh, and it's more than just this next couple of years. Like, this is what it kind of seemed like. It's like the next 15, 20 years kind of a deal. Like that's what it sounded like to me today. I'm sure you probably also agree to kind of sound like that today when listening in. We both listened in, obviously. But yeah, it definitely is very interesting to just hear, like, if there was a definite plan he's making right now. Like, is he completely done with this plan yet? No, because he's not 100% familiar with everything that's going on and the players in the organization. Like, he has a good understanding, it seems like, of the AHL team. He already said he is familiar with those players, discuss do basic scouting and all things like that. But he's gonna get a more deep dive into these guys because now they are his guys. So he is gonna get to see more of what Pittsburgh has to offer. What it sounds like to me is he thinks Pittsburgh definitely can still go out. Honestly, at least to me, it seems like honestly he is sold on the idea that Crosby, Morgan, and Letang can still compete for Stanley Cups. And honestly, that was not the problem last year. Like, the reason the Penguins were even close last year was because of those three. Those three probably played the best hockey of their careers. Not of their whole careers, but like within like the last 5, 7 years since the last two Stanley Cups. I think at least Morgan and Crosby probably had their best seasons since those Cup runs. I think last year, Letang, if he wouldn't have had the stroke badly, of course, he's perfectly fine now, thank you. But he did miss a lot of time because of that stroke. He also probably would have been also had one of the best years of his career since the playoff, Stanley Cup runs as well. Like,
Yeah,
they're not,
exactly.
even though they're aging, they're still playing at a high level. And the thing of Crosby is, he's on, of course, we all know the Gretzky Lemieux kind of level player. Like, it's gonna take him a while before he starts slowing down. And like when I say a while, he could still be playing at a high level in his 40s. Like, that's what Lemieux did. Gretzky was able to do that. And I'll be honest with you, I bet both Crosby and Gretzky can do that. And honestly, the way Malkin played last year, he always been kind of fluttering as one of the best players. Like, he's always been near that like Gretzky level area. Like, he's been near it, but he's never actually got to it. But that still doesn't mean that he won't be around for a while because he had a renaissance last year, and I really do think that when it comes time to move him to wing, which will probably happen in a couple years here, he's gonna probably be even better just because he'll be playing like he'll be in positions to make shots. At least in my mind, like, I'll be honest, if I was the Penguins, I'd really consider getting a second line center and just moving Malkin to the wing because I really think Malkin as a winger will be even better than him as a center right now. That's the thing here with these players. Like, the expiration dates, because hockey is a very different sport than the other three. As these are guys who can definitely go on playing for a very long time. Like, look at Jaromir Jagr for this. I think he was in the NHL until he was like 50, pretty much. Now, he wasn't the best when he got to the 50 mark. He wasn't obviously what he was in his prime, but he was still a productive player at that point. Like, that's the thing about hockey is that you can have guys play for a very long time. which of course you don't really see that. Like the closest one you see that in really is baseball, but you don't see that in football. You don't see that in basketball unless you're LeBron somehow. Like you rarely find athletes who can play for that long, but it's even rare to find ones who can play at that level. But that's why it was so important when you drafted Crosby in 2005, because you knew he was going to be one of those athletes as long as he panned out. And the same thing with the Capitals in 2004 for Ovechkin. That's what you knew. Like you knew these guys were going to be there for a long time, as long as you'd be able to keep them and make them happy. And so that's the thing about the Crosby era. Like I will say, a lot of people think at the end of 3 years it's going to be over, but that may not be the case. I kind of felt a feeling in my mind that we're not 3 years out to the end. I think it's longer than that, just because I think Crosby has a lot more left in the tank. I don't think he's slowing down at all. We all thought Malcolm was last year, but then we all saw him this year. He did not slow down at all. He was honestly probably the second best player on that team last year. Like I think him and Crosby were the best two players by far, and they were playing at an insanely high level. That they were playing better than most of the like star players in the NHL right now to begin with, which is pretty funny. And those guys are like jungle guys too. But the thing of the Dubas is, I think what actually happens here, I don't think you see the Penguins rebuild. I think what happens is you're gonna kind of see what I guess I'm trying to like a good of course comparison this would be, but I guess this is not a basketball one here, but I'm sure you know Miami Heat here. They had a lot of older guys the last couple of years, but they went out and they added new players, like more younger players who are very good. And then look at them now; they've made two NBA Finals appearances, and they still have some of their older talents. Like they have a guy on the bench for now who's 40 years old and he's been there for like three other championships to begin with. But like, they have a lot of great old guys. Like they'll count toward the end, and then they added some young guys like Kyle Dubas. They drafted him. He signed Jimmy Butler, and look at them now. They've made to the last three NBA Finals. I think we're going to see a similar thing at the Penguins. I think that's what his approach looks like, just from what he said. So I would not be surprised if they go out this offseason, next offseason, they're going to probably have some cap as well after the deal of Ben on those guys. But there could possibly be the idea of they're not going to rebuild, they're just going to go out and get more young guys. So when the time comes, like Crosby and, retire and stuff, that they would just take the lead. And I think that seems like what it seems to be. I know, Tyler, what do you think on your thoughts on that right there?
About the future of the team. So I can totally see, based on what Dubas has said, that that when that era ends, that we just bring in younger guys. Yes, I can totally see that happen. It's kind of what Dubas kind of started with in Toronto in a way, but I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if the Penguins went into a rebuild and came out really successful like the New York Rangers did and stuff like that.
Prospects, unlike the New York Rangers, of course, Buffalo and Capo Caco have been pretty much disastrous at this point. And that's probably more due to New York not developing them correctly, obviously. I don't think they have a good development system. Like, if they had a good one, then they'd be probably whatever Stanley Cup at this point. But the good thing about Dubas is he has a good track record with the development, so I don't think you'd worry about that. But I definitely think it's the way he said. It seems like he's going to add more young players. Like, it just doesn't sound like the way he wants to rebuild. It's not the casual tank down, get a great draft pick kind of way. It seems more like we got these old guys. Let's get some young guys in here, do trades and stuff, and then we'll try to get the old guys the best shot. Like it's similar to what the Heat are doing. That's what it sounded like from the press conference to me. And honestly, if I was the GM, that's what I'd be trying to do. Like I would be trying to trade for as many young players as possible right now. I think that's what they're gonna do. That's what it sounded like from him in the press conference. So I think we're gonna see, even starting this offseason, a massive influx of young talent We saw a little bit last year of Hextall with the Ty Smith trade. We did see that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So I would expect more of the players to be traded in big deals. I expect cap to go down because higher cap players who don't have the no movement clauses are probably getting traded. I would say he'll to spend ball who's probably getting traded. I would say right now, P3 is one of your first ones. I could see Jon Ruda getting traded, but that wouldn't be for much. It's more a salary dump. I can see Jon Ruda definitely getting traded. I always said P3. I think Brian Rust actually is a guy to watch out for the trade talk. He has a $6 million cap hit, which isn't bad, but he just has not played up to it this year, and he seems like he's getting toward what his prime should be right now, and he's probably gonna get to the end of it soon. So I would not be surprised if they go out and they do trade for more younger guys for him. Like he's a guy who can fetch young players, and I feel like that's a guy who's gonna be an odd man out. But one other thing I will say here too is on this Ace and Zucker horse situation, is he gonna get re-signed or not? This makes it a lot more interesting. Because Zucker was really good, but he's more on the older side. So now Dubas, you gotta wonder here, will they re-sign him or will they not? I think Dubas does re-sign him, but he's gonna have to take a hometown discount to be re-signed. Like there was no way that Dubas is gonna give him $8 million or anything. Like he's not worth $8 million. I think best case scenario he gets $6 million, but I think you could even go lower and do $5 million for Zucker, honestly. Like Zucker had a great deal, but I don't know what his market will be like. But I don't expect it to be anything insane. You know what I mean? I think 5 to 6 million per year. That's where he's going to end up range wise. And I think that's something the Penguins can do very doable wise. And the other issue too is Tristan Joey right now in the goaltending. That seems after the press conference, that is the primary issue he's going to solve first. And then he'll get to the bottom six, which, of course, goaltending is the main thing. And that was the one thing that seemed to be his Achilles heel in Toronto. But I think right now there's better talent already in the Penguin organization and goaltending wise. I think Joey is definitely better than anything he had in Toronto. Well, yeah, Sam Sonoff was pretty good. He just got hurt. You know what I mean? Like they've had a bunch of them, but like the main thing is they've had good talent. It just doesn't seem as panned out as well as it was supposed to. But you do have to wonder now, is it going to be Joey who stays, or are we going to see someone else? Specifically, I know there's a lot of talk right now on the whole idea of course, a lot of trade rumor here of Carter Hart to be getting traded, which honestly, if I was the Penguins, as long as the price isn't too high, I think that's perfectly what you want to have. And looks like Tyler here lost his screen here. Can you still hear me, Tyler?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
We lost you on the video, but we still have your voice. Awesome.
Okay, I don't know what that was at all. And actually, can I chime in on what you've been saying about? So, with Brian Rust, I don't know if trading Rust is a possibility right now because he actually has a full move or, geez, I can't speak. No move trade clause. I know, classic Ron Hextall. He is an NMC. But the good news is, I think it's only for 2 or 3 years is what he has. Yeah. So I don't think that's possible. Zucker, I'd love to keep. Jari, I'm hoping Jari would be too. I know he had his injury inconsistencies, but he's one of the best goalies in the NHL, in my opinion, when he's fully healthy. If not, he just, you can definitely tell if he's not himself at any given night at all.
Honestly, though, it may not be a bad idea for the Penguins to invest into a two-funded option at goaltending, honestly.
Like a 1A, 1B type
stuff. It may be a good idea to re-sign Joey and then say, go to Hart's failable, trade for him and just have 2 of them right there, just going out like a 2-hitter monster.
Actually, that might actually be a good thing because I'm pretty sure Jari and Carter Hart are from the same town and they practice together in the off seasons. They do a training. I remember back in the COVID year, they had a bet where whoever plays better when they play each other, the other one gets a Lamborghini for a year. Like gets to rent a Lamborghini for a year. I mean, so like that would honestly help the confidence level of Carter Hart, Tristan Jari. It's just a matter of if Dubas wants to do that or not. And I think it's important that the Penguins keep Jari because the goaltending class of free agents this year is not that good. So Jari is definitely the best goalie available in this free agency class.
But he did mention trade there. That's what makes me think Carter Hart is a possibility because they were specifically mentioning trade while talking today. So they're obviously going to look all over and see if Joey's still going to be the good fit. But if I'm honestly Dubas, if the trade's not that expensive and it's not going to cost you that much for Carter Hart, there's no reason to upgrade your backup position and just have two starters go and just alternate every single night. And if Joey gets hurt, which he does have injury proneness, he does get injured a decent bit. You have another guy who's also number one who can step in and like you don't have to bring out the Smith anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
and
that
you can
can
just
help
get rid of him.
big time. Yeah.
Maybe even use the Smith as part of the trade for Carter Hart. And then I know there was trade discussions on maybe the Penguins bringing in John Gibson. Yeah, I get it. You're a Pittsburgh boy. Get out of here. You're not. I mean, your contract's way too much. I know Connor Hellebuck was another option. I wouldn't mind that, but it'd probably cost multiple first-round picks for him. So
I don't know if first rounds for goalies, but it would be a high trade for sure.
it would be a very big reach, especially with Hellebuck coming out of his prime.
Yeah, thing I will say on a goalie, there's only two goalies in the NHL that I would probably say are even worth one first round pick, and that's just Storkin and Sorokin. And those guys are not getting traded for sure.
Who was the second one?
Sorokin, the Islanders one.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you.
I know
Now,
it makes sense for me to say, like I said, one guy. Yeah.
I don't know. You kind of like
and
glitched out for a second, and I couldn't hear you.
Sorokin, yeah.
What about like Andre Vasilevsky?
Oh yeah, Vasilevsky. Yeah, Vasilevsky.
I wouldn't even mind doing that for Jake Ottinger. I honestly think Jake Ottinger is a much better goalie than Sorokin is.
Yeah, Ottinger's really good too. I just don't think he's done enough to get the idea of he could be a first round pick.
What about Saros down in Nashville?
I would say, but the problem is his age is getting into it now. He's only 28 now. I don't think he's a first round pick. I think he's a second round pick worth. I would say that. But I would easily trade a second for Solos, and that is definitely also a possibility for the Penguins. Solos, and that's one I also would really like to see. But there's going to be a whole lot of areas we have to look at here, I think. Especially with Dubas now. He's going to look at everything we got.
And especially since, too, if the Penguins ever went out and went after Saros. I mean, if Mikael Granlund's worth a second round pick, you'd think Saros would be worth about 50.
Yeah.
You know? Because, yeah.
And then so trade deadline didn't make any sense when it came to what was given up. Just saying. Oh, and some more hockey news here. Patrick Kane is out 4 to 6 months for a surgery on his hip.
Yeah, reconstructed hip.
And I'm pretty sure he's a free agent this year, so who knows? Maybe he'll be on the cheap.
He'll be out till at least November, December, or January.
Honestly, I don't know if he'll get signed then now if he's going to be out for that much. And he'll probably be on the cheap too after this horrible season this year. He may be on the cheap.
Yeah, we'll end up seeing.
If he's on the cheap, that may be a good option. If you can get him for like $3-4 million.
No, he won't. There's no way.
That's the thing is he had an offer.
He'd probably get around 6 or 7, maybe even 8. It would be textbook if you got like 8.8 million. 8.8 million.
I don't think he'll get that for the season he had this year. And now this whole hip thing. That's going to bring him down a lot, though. Though I would sign him for $5-6 million. I would sign him. He'd be a nice depth piece to have in the bottom 6, or even the top 6, where you want to put him.
Yeah, I'd put him up with Crosby, honestly. Put him on the right wing with Jake Getzel, move Raquel down to the second, and then maybe you can get rid of Rust then.
Yeah. The thing I would say about wingers here is, there was one thing about Dubas, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about today is, so I'm going to get a little excited here, but there is one thing, bringing him in could really open the door for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We talked about youth and bringing more youth in, that's what he talked about. There were two guys who are very young and have a very strong connection to Dubas that have very good chances of leaving their teams this year, after this year, and going different places. and that is Mitch Mono and Austin Matthews. Those are two guys who, honestly, I feel like will probably both look for changes of scenery this year, because Toronto may even trade them if they don't like what's going on. I think these two guys, they may not be in Toronto next year. And same with Tavares. I think Toronto, they went all in this year. I think that was pretty much their last ditch effort to try to do something. They can continue to try, but they can have expiring contracts. And I just feel like Austin Matthews, he always seems like he wants to change the scenery. And I think Mitch Montgomery probably does too. At least from what I've seen and heard, that's kind of what we're getting at
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
And the new
I get your
GM
standpoint.
for Toronto, he's the old Calgary one. He's the guy that Tony Goodrow and Matthew Kachuk were running away screaming from, playing the goal that they can get away from. So I can see the exact thing happening in Toronto too. This guy, I don't really think that. Oh, I got Tyler cracking up a little.
As much as I would love to see either Marner or Matthews in Pittsburgh, I want to say that's honestly unrealistic in this time right now, especially with, you already said Dubas is a high spender, so you know that we're already gonna be up against the cap probably heading into
But here's
next
the
season.
thing, though. I will say on this. I think if Dubas is going to emphasize more the young players, he actually probably is going to get rid of a lot of the larger cap hits that we have.
Yeah.
Now. The only ones
Now,
I think they are large, and the largest on our team, I think, is 8 million, and that's Crosby. And Crosby's probably going to take a hometown discount and go for like 6 million, probably. Just because he's willing to take the hometown discount, because he's got all the sponsorships and everything.
yeah.
He makes enough money. You know, of course, Malkin's already taken one, Latang's already taken one. Like, the highest cap hit they have right now is Crosby at 8, but after Crosby's contract is done, it's going to be at 6. And like 5 guys at 6, that leaves you with a ton of cap hits, actually. Because a lot of young guys, if you go on a player they're like recently drafted, that cap hit's going to be like in like less than $1 million. Like, someone will be like 875, 950. And if you trade guys like Petrie, whose cap hits are like 6 million, there's a lot of guys you can trade who have a higher cap hit. Raquel is a guy also you could consider as well. As much as I like him, but if you can open up cap and get someone like Austin Matthews, which I feel as if that offseason they will have cap to sign him if they want to.
Mm-hmm. And
in my mind is they will have a lot more cap in the next few years. They will have more of it open up. It's not going to be as badly mismanaged. They have 20 million right now, but I don't expect Dubas to spend all 20 million of that contract yet. I expect him to most likely, I would say, spend around 15 million of it, but I expect him to keep a decent bit of budget open because he wants to add youth and he wants to bring in what sound like to me young star players. So I think he's going to keep cap open a little bit for the opportunity to get these guys. And I do feel as if the idea, at least, it makes sense, and I think it's definitely possible on both sides. I think the idea of Austin Matthews going to play Sidney Crosby, at least to him, sounds like a win. I think to the Penguins, that's a win. And I think there will be cap that will be open by that point. At least that makes me think. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I have a feeling that as a definite possibility, we see one of them, out of the two of Mono or Matthews, show up in Pittsburgh at some point in the next few years. Like, we're going to see, I think, definitely Dubas' main goal will probably be to bring a young star to the team.
Yeah, and that's a good standing point, but here's the way I'm going to look at it at this current state. Is you're going to have Dubas is probably going to walk into next offseason with a decision. Do I go out and sign either Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner and bring him back so he's in my system? Or do I re-sign Jake Getzel? Because it would be very hard to do both. To sign one of either Matthews or Marner and bring back Jake Getzel. Because Jake Getzel isn't going to get a pay cut for a hometown discount. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. He's going to get around $8 to $9 million probably, especially at the level that he's playing. And Matthews, I would expect Matthews on his next contract to get paid as much as Connor McDavid's getting paid right now, if not more, just because Matthews is that type of player. Marner, you'd probably get cheaper around closer to where Getzel's contract would be. But if you wanted to go after someone like that, then it's going to be one or the other.
The thing I would say about Gensu is I don't agree with you. I think he will take a hometown discount if offered it. Because here's the thing with Crosby. He's going to take a hometown discount most likely for sure. And that's the same offseason for the most part. Like, they are going to be, there are multiple players on that team willing to take discounts, and I think Gensu was one of those guys.
Well, Getzel is still in his prime too, though. And
he's going to
when you're in your prime, this is going to be your best time where you can cash out and get the most money you'll get paid in your career. That's why your prime years are so important, because if you do really well, you play really well during your prime years, you're going to get your big contract is what's going to happen.
You could, but the thing as well is, too, we was talking about a culture in Pittsburgh that it doesn't really matter much to mine. Like, if Sidney Crosby did that, he probably wouldn't be in Pittsburgh right now. Same with Malkin. I say Crosby could be, but we wouldn't have all three of those guys if they did that. Like, there's a different culture in Pittsburgh, and that's what makes me think that a situation like that for Gensel is pretty unrealistic. I just don't see that in my mind. That's just the way the Pittsburgh Penguins franchise is built. It's built on more winning rather than making money, and I think Gensel is a prime example of that. Like, and also he's already got paid pretty good by Buffalo already, so I think he's more than willing to take a hometown discount. I'd be very surprised if he does not. Like, even if we wouldn't get Matthews, I would be very surprised if he's not signing for a hometown discount, in my mind. But I think that's pretty much it here. I don't know, Tyler, do you have any last things you want to say about Dubas here and the highway?
Basically, my big takeaway is I think Pittsburgh made the right decision in bringing Dubas, and I guess we're going to have to wait to see what Dubas wants to do with the team here in the coming months, what's he going to do with the GM situation and all these players that he's got to re-sign, what he wants to do and take whatever direction towards the team. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely make sure to check out his podcast. For this, actually, not that's a different one. I was going to say Full of City podcast.
Yeah, that's
our this podcast. Me and him both do together as we work for the Butler Blue Sox. So if you're a Blue Sox fan, you're from Butler, check that out. Or if you're just interested in that, just check it out. But he also has, of course, the Penguins podcast. Yinzers at the point. I know he hasn't done much recently, but I hear he's getting back on it. So definitely make sure to check that out. He's really a great podcast. Knows a lot about the Penguins. That's why I brought him in today, because, you know, I'm not saying I'm not much of an expert. I am an expert. But he's really good at Penguins, and he's got some great views. So honestly, wanted to bring him in today and just, of course, you know, have him come on. But yeah, make sure to check out his podcast. But if you guys like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe, and tune in for more. Have a great day, everybody.